Hi, it's Simon here from SDL Photography. Just wanting to take you through a little bit of an edit of a photo that I took today. I was out for a run early this morning and I came across this scene. So what I did is I quickly ran back home, grabbed my camera gear, went back out and snapped a few photos of this boat that had washed up on the shore from the storm. So this is the raw file that has just been brought into Lightroom, and I'll just show you a quick edited photo that I did just straight from this, and I'll just take you through the steps that I've done to get to this photo. So this is the final product. It's looks slightly different from the first one. It crops different, and the look and the intensity and vibrancy is quite different too. So let me just take you through some of the steps and the processes. We're going to be using Lightroom and we're going to be using Photoshop to get to this end point. So let's just start with this. So we've got the photo here. As you can see, it looks pretty good. It's using a Lee big stopper filter on there, and a Lee hard grade filter to balance the sky and the landscape as well. So what we're going to do is jump into the develop module. And in the develop module, what we want to do is just adjust our color temperature, because the Lee big filter actually gives it a very blue tinge to it. So we're just going to, and you'll see I'm going to use the presets on this side, and you'll just look up in this little section here, and I'm going to pull the presets up so that I'm taking away that blue, especially in the sky, to get it to be somewhere a little bit warmer. So we'll get that up there, so you've now got it looking much nicer. Okay, so we got that where our exposure's not too bad at the moment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually roll down. I don't want the details there. I'm just going to roll down to camera calibration, and I'm going to take it out of Adobe Standard, put it into camera landscape. This is just going to pump up a little bit of the lightness in the exposure and pump up a little bit more of the blue and colors. What I also want to do is do the lens correction on it. So I want to come into the profile, enable the profile correction, and it just takes some slight lens distortion out from the 11 to 16 mil Tacchino that I was using, and I also want to do some chromatic aberrations, so just clicking those on. Now I don't want to do too much in Lightroom because I know I'm going to be coming into Photoshop and doing a fair amount of the work there. But what I do want to do, and as you can see up in the histogram, it's actually a reasonably balanced photo. It could push a little bit more in the exposure, and we might just actually do that. We might just pump up the exposure just a little bit so that we're moving that brightness, but we don't want to lose too much of that depth in the color in the ocean in the process. We want it light, but we don't want to blow out these white wash here. Now what I wanted to do here is I actually want to do a bit of a crop and a horizon adjustment. So I'm going to grab the straightening tool, so I've just clicked on the angle. I'm going to come in here, and I know this section of the water should look reasonably level, so I'm just going to run a level along there, and it just moves it just slightly. Okay, so now I'm just going to just change the aspect ratio. I wanted to do it as a 16:9, so 1920 by 1080, and so that's just going to change the ratio. You can see I've got the overlays on it. I'm using the golden ratio here, and at the moment, you know, I've got the horizon bang on the, you know, the water horizon bang on the golden ratio there. The ship's sitting right in that nice point on the intersection. But I actually just want to change it slightly. I want to give a little bit more emphasis to the sky, so I'm going to bring down the photo, not quite so much on the foreground. So I'm going to, you know, break some of those rules, but that's okay. Rules are there meant to be broken. So I'm happy with that. So we've got that into here. So it's now coming in, feels like it's coming a little bit closer. There's a slight crop on there. And so we've got quite a good photo coming here. So what we're going to do now, and I don't want to fiddle around too much, you can see the histogram's pretty nice. I can push up some of the highlights, I can push up some of the shadows. So if we're working in highlights, when you come over there, you'll see that it shows you which area there. But I'm just going to leave that for the moment. So what I want to do now, so let's just drop back into the library mode, is I'm going to right click and I'm going to go edit in Photoshop. And I'm using Photoshop CC 2015. And that'll open it up into Photoshop. And so we've got our photo here. So what I want to do first is I'm just going to I'm just going to reduce my size of my, okay, just bring that down, cursor down. Okay, so what I want to do is just in this section, there's a fair bit of driftwood and bits and pieces on the beach, and you've actually got this shadow of the tape on a person just there. So we just, being long exposure, it kind of disappears, but we just might clean that up a little bit. So I'm just going to put a little cleanup layer in. So I'm just going to create a new layer, empty layer. I'm going to grab my cloning tool over here. So, and it's content aware. It's going to sample all layers. Normal mode. I've got it on a little. I'm just going to increase the size here. So we're just going to kind of do it roughly. We're just going to zoom in slightly into here so that we're working in our area that we're wanting to look at. So we're just going to be working around here. So what I want to do is just kind of take some of those off, and the nice thing about that is we can just slide through some of these things and just get rid of this. Now this is the way I'm working, is a non-destructive process, because I'm actually working on a layer above it, so the background layer is still there, so I can turn it on, turn it off. So we just want to get rid of some of these pieces here. So, and we just want to kind of clean it up. We don't really need all of these dark things, because when you've got these kind of dark pieces here, it kind of distracts from the overall feel of this long exposure. So we're going to be pretty quick in doing this. The computer has to catch up every so often in what it's doing. And you'll have times when it'll work, times when it just doesn't work. So if it's not getting what you want in the first place, then we just need to go over it again. So I'm just going to change the size and just be a little bit finer with that. Just take out some of those little spots just around here. Just take out that section. So we're just going to take some of these out. So just for the purpose of this, so we're just going to take some of those out. I might leave this person in here just for the sake of time, because you don't really need to watch me clone out, just using the mouse and getting rid of all of these bits and pieces. In the original photo, I actually took out this little section around here as well, because you actually have a little bit of taping going across here as well, all the way through the photo, and you're getting this little red striping coming in. So we're just going to, and the nice thing is just taking all these out, and occasionally just go, don't really want those big spots there. This darkness in here, we can get rid of some of those. Okay, and we'll just, I know there's just a couple of these little bits and pieces here, so we'll just get rid of some of those. Okay, all nicely done. So if we just come back and zoom out and look back out at the photo, you can actually see we've taken all of these bits out here. So if we just turn it off, that's where they were. Put it back in. Now I've been pretty rough at that. I would probably clean it up a little bit more on that. So we're just going to go with that now. And so what I'm just going to do is just group those layers together. So just make a new group. Just going to unlock the background, and we're just going to come here and we're going to just group them together, and we're going to call them cleaned. Okay, so what I want to now do is I actually want to duplicate those two layers together and then do a little bit of noise reduction just up in the clouds, because if we actually zoom into the clouds slightly and we come in here, you'll see that there's just a little bit of noise around here. So we're going to just do a little bit of noise reduction just up in the cloud layer here. So we're just going to select our two layers here, and we're just going to use the key command Option Shift E, which is going to duplicate all of those layers, creating a new one. And I'm just going to move it out of my folder up there. Close that folder up, and we're going to just name it noise reduction. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab one of our filters and under noise, and it's reduce noise. It's going to load up. It's going to give you a preview, and then it's going to run the noise reduction on it. So I'm just going to move it to a section of the cloud, and so if you have a look around here, it will work, and you just need to actually see whether the settings you've got is doing too much and it makes it blocky and gets rid of any of the detail. So it's just taking a little bit of this off, so we just might take some of that color noise down, and as it works away, it's still preserving a reasonable amount of detail there. The strength is quite low. It's trying to preserve as much detail as it can. I mean, you can just fiddle with the settings till you're right with it, and you just got to wait for it to load, and you can go. It's going to try and preserve as much detail as it can. It's going to reduce, it's a low strength. You can pump it up, and it's going to be even higher. So we're just going to go OK on that. So overall, it's now reduced the noise down in the sky. So if we come in here, we just go 100%, and we just move that around, you can see that that's reduced. You can see that there's not, those little grains and noise up in things. So we've just reduced that down. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to now just do a vibrance on it, and we're just going to do an interesting called blend if process on the vibrance. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to select those two again. I'm going to do our duplicate again, and we're just going to use this for vibrance. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to click on the vibrance, and I'm just going to apply it to the layer below. And I'm actually going to be really strong with this. I'm going to push it up, and you can see it's really pushing the colors up as I go, and increase some of the saturation in it as well. And I'm going to say okay. Now hang on, I went delete. I've got okay, get rid of that. Now you might be thinking, wow, that's just way too much. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to double click on that layer, and it's going to bring in my layer styles. And I'm going to do down here blend if. Now I'm going to do a blend if command on here, and I'm going to split these little markers so you can move them up and down, and that will tell it where it's going to blend and where it's not going to blend. So at the moment it's blending on everything. So as soon as you move this down, it'll go, I'm not going to blend in this section. I'm going to actually remove it. If there's any particular grey value, so luminosity value, then I'm not going to blend on all of the brights. So I'm just going to bring that back, and if you hold the Option key down, it splits it. So I'm going to move that down. I'm going to split it from the dark as well. I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to move them down. So we've got them here, so we're just going to say OK, and you'll see that it's actually quite different now. So you can go on, off. It's actually brought up this, and it's given a nice bit of vibrance, but it's protected the highlights, and it's protected the shadows. You haven't oversaturated, you haven't created too much vibrance in all of this. So I'm just going to group these two together again, and we'll just name that layer vibrance. I like to name things as I go along so I know what I'm doing, and I can remember what it is. So we're just going to select everything as it all is. We're going to create a new layer on here. So a new layer, and we're going to do another process which is called we're going to create another layer. We're going to change its blending properties, and we're going to give it a blur. So we're going to call it a soft light blur. So first step, the filter, we come down to blur, Gaussian blur, and because it's a reasonably large photo, what you want to do is try and get your radius around a size where it blurs out. You can still make out that this is a photo of things, but it's blurred out the details. So for my kind of sensor size, 30 pixels is pretty good. So we've got that there, and you might be going, oh, that looks horrible. So we're going to change our blending mode to soft light. Now it's changed and made it really intense. Now there's two kind of blending modes that you can use here, soft light or overlay. Overlay gives it a much more heavier look. I tend to like soft light on this, so it's a bit lighter. And then we're going to change the opacity, and we're going to drop it down to around 30. So what you can actually see is that it's making a change, and some of it's subtle. It's increasing the depth and the contrast, and it just, when you do these things, you actually go, you do some of the processes, you have a look at it and you go on, off. Does it make a difference to the photo? Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? So I think it makes it okay. It makes it work, it makes it a bit better, so we're going to do that. So now the next stage is I'm going to actually create a black and white image from this. So I'm going to create a new layer to get it to work, a copy of all of them together, and then I'm going to open up, and I've got a program, external program from that's Nik Silver Efex Pro. So I'm just going to open that up. It's going to open up another program with this copy here. The reason I copy it is it tends to work better when it's working off a fully combined layer. So this is a black and white creation program. It's really good. You can do a lot of adjustments to the brightness, contrast, structures. I'm going to be looking at some of the structures here, and I've got a preset. I'm using one of the presets that gives quite a good result on what I want. It's really good because you can actually do color filtering into things. So it's bringing the black and white. So if you wanted to change the look and feel, and you wanted to add one of the color filters in, you can. It also has emulation of film types, and if you wanted to go into all of those things, so you can emulate various different film types here. So I don't want to do any of that. What I want to do is just come down to this high structured smooth. So it's actually going to give a lot more dynamic look to the sky. So the reason I'm doing it is I want to actually create a real sense of dynamic sky in there. Now you could actually go into, harsh or smooth, or you could go really high contrast, but what I'm looking for is this high structure. It's actually pushing the structure up in the mid-tones. It's reduced the fine structure, so we should be able to reduce a bit of the noise that might come out and some of these things. And so we're just going to go okay, flip it through. It's going to process for a while. Unfortunately, because I've loaded all of these programs on it ages ago and moved them around, it actually creates two copies at the moment, which is not normally what it would do. So it creates its high structured copy, and then it actually creates another copy which is just the normal non-standard with no effects on it. So we'll actually get two silver effects come in from the Nik collection over here, and we're going to take one out. It's actually quite handy at times because you can actually test the two different versions and see which one works better. Okay, so we've got the two here. So the top one is the one that we have that has got the high structure in it, and the other one is just the straight black and white conversion. So we're just going to take that one out of the way, and we're going to take our layer out that we used. We actually don't need that layer, so we're just going to delete that one. And we've got here, and we'll just switch it off for the moment, doesn't really matter. So what I've got here is now this Silver Efex Pro layer, and what I want to do is I actually want to change the layer style from normal to luminosity. So it actually is just affecting the intensity, the luminosity of the color that's there. So it's overlaying, and it's creating this this strong effect here. So I'm looking at it, I'm going, it's way too strong at the moment. So I'm going to drop the opacity down so that it's not like, in your face kind of things. But if you're after that look, you can have it in your face and do that. But I want to drop it down a bit. I want to have it about here. Now I'm going to do something that's that's going to be a little bit more selective on how I want it. I'm going to create a layer mask, and I'm going to mask out a section because I want it more prominently in the sky. I want a little bit in the water, but I want to try and get most of it out of this section of the sand because it's making it really harsh and not looking how I want it to be. So I'm going to just add that layer mask, and now I'm just going to paint out a section. So I'm going to get my paintbrush over here, and I'm going to paint with black, and I'm going to paint with black onto this white mask, and I'm just going to increase my brush size here. So and I'm just running it at 50% opacity up here and 50% flow up here. So we're just going to brush across the ocean down here and just this section. And so what we get is, you've got a 50% over here. So and now I want to just come into this section, and I want to actually just keep on brushing until we've got a nice, solid, strong section, and we've just reduced it out. So, okay, so we've got this layer mask, and if you want to look at the layer mask, you hold the Option key down and you click on the layer mask, and you'll see the black and white version of the actual mask of what you're painting. So I can see I've just kind of missed a little section here, so we'll just add that bit in, and now we just get that out there. So it's without it, with it, and so you can see that there's more structure, a little bit more detail in the boat and in the ocean, and a lot more in the sky as well. So the only problem with doing this is because because I was working really hard, we've created a little bit of noise up here yet again. So we just might do another little noise reduction layer just on here, and we just might selectively just do that up the top. So we're just going to take all of those layers, combine them together, create a new layer, and we're just going to go noise reduction. Okay, we're going to add our filter onto there, which is our noise reduction filter. We know that the settings that we had last time worked quite well, so we're just going to move around it. We're just going to look up into that sky area that's just up in here. We'll just let it refresh, and you can see it's taken out most of that section. So we might actually just pump up that little bit of color noise there and see what it does. Okay, it works pretty good. We might just pull it up a little bit higher on our strength. Okay, I'll be happy with that. Okay, so we're just going to let that run on there, so it's got to work hard to get it going. Okay, there it is. So it's reduced the noise. Now if I'm wanting to, I could actually come in and I could actually create another layer mask on here, and I'm going to just grab my brush again. I've got it on black. I'm just going to increase the size here, And I'm just going to paint just around the bottom here and just reduce that noise reduction just in that section. We're happy with that, so that we've still got a lot of structure. And let me just, and you can just change the size of your brush, and you can be selective. You go, I don't actually want the noise reduction on the yacht, and I don't want it down that section, and I'm happy to have a fair bit of structure back into the rocks. So you can be quite selective with where you want your noise reduction just with these masks. Masks are great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do another technique, which is now going to sharpen the whole thing. So we're going to get this looking nice and sharp and creating the final look and feel to the photo. But I only want to really sharpen this yacht and a bit of the rocks here, and I want to leave the rest. And the thing about long exposure water is you've got that soft, streaky looking water, and you've got the clouds that are looking soft. So we want to actually just add the sharpening in selectively in the areas we go. So we're going to select all our layers again. We're going to make a copy of them all, combine them all together, and we've got a new layer which we're just going to name Sharpen. So what we do there is we're actually going to run a particular filter, which is right down in the other filter. It's called High Pass. But before we do that, we're just going to change the layer blending mode. We're going to change it to linear light. It's going to make the photo look horrible. Then we're going to look filter, other, high pass. And your high pass filter, if you actually move this around, you'll be able to see where it is. And we're just going to pull it up where we've got this little bit of writing. So let it work, and you can see what the high pass filter is doing. It's creating the edges here for you. So you can actually increase the radius, and you can make it stronger, less. You want a radius around the 1.2, 1.1 kind of basis. So you try, it's going to make all of this quite strong here. So it's going to define the edges for you. So we say, okay, so we're at about a 1.3 at the moment. We want to do another layer blending style. We want to do a blend if on this layer. So we double click that layer. We don't actually want to sharpen anything that's really white, and we don't want to sharpen anything that's really black. So we're going to move the slider down to 225 or thereabouts. Option click it, split the slider and bring it down. We're going to bring this slider up to around 20. Option click it, slide it out and split that there. So you get a nice gradient of blending in here between these two. This is hard, so it's not blending at all there, and then it gradient blend to here, fully blended in, fully, that's 100% working, and then reducing down to nothing here. Okay, so we've got it in there. Now we don't want the sharpening on everything. We don't want to. We've just reduced the noise here, and now we've added that horrible look back into the sky. So we actually want to get rid of that. So we're going to create a new layer mask on this. We're going to invert it by pressing Command I, inverting it, and so we've actually taken it off. At the moment, nothing is actually sharpened. So we're now going to change our brush, and we're going to change it to white. So we're now going to paint on our layer mask in white. I'm just going to reduce the size down, and we're going to just paint in just on our ship here, and being a little bit, we're not going to be too precise about it, but we're just going to make sure that we've covered it over. I actually want some of this rock in here, just in here, and I'm just going to reduce this down. I just want that there. And what you can see, so let's just have a look at that layer mask. So we're just in here. I'm just going to increase that slightly. We want to be able to, It's good to always pop into your layer mask and have a look at it, especially when you're trying to get this complete white section, is you can actually see where you've actually got some holes and little problems. So we want to just finish that up, get it all white just in those sections. So we're being very selective about the sharpening that we're doing. We're just going to sharpen in there. So let's just pop back out over here. So we're just going to zoom in so we can have a look at this here. So we're just going to come into our ship. We're just going to turn off that sharpening at the moment. So that's unsharpened. And when we sharpen it up, you can see that it becomes quite a lot, sharper and brighter, but we've still got just up in here. And so let's just lift it up in here. We've still got this really nice, soft water flowing through. So we take that off. You can see it hasn't affected that. But if we come just a little bit further into the rocks and we have the sharpening back, you'll see it sharpens up the photos. So you've got it all there. And now just the final thing that we should do when we look at a photo is, and this is something that we should do just coming across here, is occasionally you'll have little spots. If you've done a whole lot of processing like I've just done here, you may have introduced a little bit of an artifact. So you just want to create yourself just a final cleanup layer, and just so that you can actually do any final little cleanup. So I'm just going to have a look through the photo with my healing brush here, and I've got content aware, and I've got sample all layers. So I'm just on the final cleanup here. What I'm going to do is just come and look at it 100%, and I'm just going to quickly scan across the photos, and I can see one spot that I've got a problem here. You can see there's a little hot pixel, so we're just going to reduce that down, and we're just going to go just on the hot pixel, take it out. There's another one there. There's actually one just here, and you should just go through your photo at 100% and just look for any little section that's just not quite right. So if there's a little bit that's a dust spot on the sensor, that'll show up. There's techniques for doing that you can look at, or little hot pixels or little issues that you've got here. So you can just see there's just a couple of spots there. Okay, and you're looking for all of these. Actually, there's a few up in the clouds because we've done a lot of processing on the clouds. Occasionally you'll get these things popping up, so we're just going to look through there. Just going through, finally being nice and quick. I can just see one there, and down here. If I was being really fussy, I could take out that little section of the rope that's on there, but I'm not. I'm just going to leave it. And you can go anything that you're just going, oh, I really don't like some of these. There's just too many of them. You can just finally clean up all of those little bits and pieces around the place. And you can just do your final cleanup on things. So we're almost finishing this scan. It's always a good process just to go through and scan through your photo for any of these little bits. The last thing you want to do is print it and go, oh, that just hasn't worked. That's just, I've got something on there, there's a problem. Okay, and we've just got one up here. So, and one down here. And that's it. So we're just going to save that back out. It's going to take a little moment, so we'll come back in just in a moment once it's all complete with all of those. Now what I could do is, if you wanted to, and we're just going to come back fit screen here, is you could do a selective vignette. It's got that kind of look on it already. We could do that if you wanted to have a stronger version of that. but I'm happy with it at the moment. We've got a fair amount of brightness around here, so the main subject that we're trying to focus on is nice and bright, and the rest is a little bit darker, and that's just from the way the photo is taken and the processing that we've done and trying to sharpen this up. So your main section of your photos, you want sharp, you want bright to be able to really come forward. So it's going to come forward. It's going to work well on its different compositional elements. So if we're looking at the golden ratio, it's sitting down on that golden ratio line there. And we're almost finishing saving this file, because it gets rather big once you do a whole range of layers. If I was really not wanting to do any further editing of this photo, I should just probably take that final one out of there, then you could actually, and you think you're done and you don't want to make any changes, because the beauty about this is you go, well, I didn't like any of this, or I want to take these things out. You can step backwards through your process and redo them, because when we look at the image, there's our original image. So if I hold the Option key down, that's what it originally looked like to where we've taken it. So what it looked like to where we've taken it. Okay, so that's all saved off. We're just going to flip over to Lightroom, and you can see that if we just come back into here, here's our latest photo that we've got here, and so you can see that we've got that there. So you know, the original photo, the one I'd edited beforehand first time, to this one. And you can see I actually changed the color balance in it, and so each time you process it, you might actually get a slightly different look and a different feel. So I hope, and then you can then save this off to where you want it to go. So I hope that you've enjoyed watching the process that I've used to create this photo, the final image, and I hope that it has been helpful. This is Simon Lee from SDL Photography. Thanks for watching.